Oh, there's Alfredo. Lundqvist crashed in practice as well, didn't they? But they got his car fixed.
Yeah, 15 lap.
That's did they have to take the corner off?
2 corners.
2 corners?
Yeah.
Bloody hell. I saw the picture and it looked like at least the front left corner had been done.
Front left.
Maybe some kind of record.
That's what
I saw that picture, yeah. He needed the rear left doing too.
So it collapsed.
Right.
He was probably the most committed to taking it back next.
Yeah.
Watched it back. Hitting the curb the closest.
I don't suppose you happen to know if that's just a repainted tub or a different tub from Puerto Rico. Cristante and someone else crashed, didn't they?
Someone damaged data.
Right, okay. Easily done. Indy 500 and Euroformula at Po.
I'm thinking front of the tub of
Okay, that was 30 seconds, so I'm guessing we're on fairly soon.
et 26 mai. Replongez dans les plus belles heures de la course auto sur un circuit urbain unique en France qui a vu triompher il y a 70 ans le célèbre Fangio. 9 compétitions, plus de 200 voitures au départ, dont des F1 d'avant 1965 et 400 véhicules de collection au parc Beaumont. Le Grand Prix historique de Pau, un hommage d'exception aux légendes du sport auto, les 25 et 26 mai, avec RFM.
En direct du PC Animation, nous retrouvons toute l'équipe de création de communication.
Et nous allons retrouver dans quelques instants du côté du podium. Si du côté de la régie vidéo, on peut nous montrer quelques images des F3 Euroformula Open. C'est Manger du Mal avec ce nouveau titre qui sortent du côté du paddock Tissier. Vous les retrouverez après. Ce bien entendu, je dis pour celles et ceux qui sont du côté du boulevard des Pyrénées, n'hésitez pas à venir nous rejoindre ici. Sachant que si vous êtes du côté du boulevard des Pyrénées, vous n'êtes pas très loin du square Aragon où se trouve l'espace dévolu à Fangio, ce pilote de légende. Nous fêtons les 70 ans de la première victoire ici à Pau. Trénuré, qui est un journaliste qui officie, vous connaissez plus savoir que son visage sur France Bleu Béarn en particulier. Thierry a commis, entre autres de ses passions, un ouvrage qui se propose de dédicacer tout le long du week-end et qui se propose de vous présenter du côté de cet espace situé sous chapiteau en plein cœur.
Good afternoon, race fans. The fabulous Pau Grand Prix circuit in the south of France in the Pyrenees is the venue for the third race in the 2019 Euroformula Open Championship. There is a look at the circuit, 2.7 kilometres, winding its way through the back streets of Pau, tight corners and fast corners, a very punishing and narrow circuit for the 18 drivers who will be tackling the third race of this year's championship. And as you can see from the skyline in the background, we've had some slightly unpredictable weather conditions so far. There's the crowd, and you can see some are opting for umbrellas in the distance and others not, because we've had rain showers on and off for the past hour or so. The track is fairly dry at the moment. We've just seen the cars heading out towards the circuit, all on slick tyres, but the weather conditions really threatening to change at any moment. You can see a pretty high chance of some rain coming up over the next half hour. The spectators in the grandstands, and there are plenty of them, taking no chances whatsoever. I'm Keith Collentine, and joined in the commentary box today by Elliot Wood. And Elliot, we're having a look at Billy Munger, who's about to head out for his his third race in the Euroformula Championship, and he's qualified fairly well up today compared to Paul Ricard.
Yeah, it's a very different circuit to Paul Ricard, where there's a lot of long straights and heavy braking zones. And
couldn't be more different, other than the fact it's in France.
Yeah, and the weather was certainly different here too. And we're going
Let's
over
have a listen to Jesus Pereira with Alfredo in the pits.
Jesus Pareja, first time for the Euroformula at Po. You must be very happy.
Yes, I'm very happy. It's really amazing to live the atmosphere, you know, the place, the racetrack, and even the so nice circuit, you know, and historic.
Of course, it's a track with a lot of history. It's a Grand Prix with a lot of prestige. That brings a plus to the Euroformula.
Yes, I think so. Yes, in fact, you know, all the drivers told me that they're required to learn this kind of track. So this is maybe the best. For sure, this improves a lot our series.
Thank you.
GT Sport boss Jesus Pereira there talking up the Po Grand Prix, and as he was saying, Elliot, they've been racing at this circuit for more than 8 decades and it's virtually unchanged in that time. That's almost unprecedented in the world of motor racing.
Yeah, I spoke to the vice president of the national organising body of this race and the coordinator of the Po Grand Prix itself, and he said the way they've been running it hasn't changed at all, pretty much, and the only change to the circuit was for the second edition in 1935, where we have the long turn 6 right-hander, where previously they cut from turn 5 straight line to turn 7.
Would it be too cruel of me for you to ask you who won in 1935?
Oh, I think it might have been Alberto Ascari.
I think it was Tazio Nuvolari.
Oh.
I'm sorry, we're already on to the Po Grand Prix trivia, folks. It's going to be like this all weekend, I'm sure. We're getting ready to send the drivers out for today's race. The fast lane is open in the pits, so they're going to be heading out to do their reconnaissance laps, and this is going to be really important for them, Elliot, to get a feel for the conditions.
Yeah, in qualifying it was very wet, and we didn't actually see much action and people going off, but when the circuit was drier, people pushed to the limit, we did see mistakes being made. So in this in-between type conditions, it will be interesting to see what happened.
It's that classic kind of racing circuit or street racing conundrum, particularly when you have inexperienced drivers like this. As the conditions ramp up and they start to get a bit more confidence and start to get a bit more familiarity, inevitably one or two of them begin to ask a little bit too much of the available grip and start to discover just how close those barriers are. Here is our field then heading out for its reconnaissance lap around this 2.7 kilometre circuit. A couple of the Teo Martin drivers heading out there. The exit from the pit lane feeds them pretty much straight into the second corner of the track, which is the first significant bend. That's Gare, so-called because there's a station down there for those of you who did better at their GCSE French than I did. And then they begin the climb up towards the third corner on the track, which is Pont Oscar, the first of the really slow bends. But the entire track, Elliot, really is like this the whole way around. It's bordered by barriers, it's very, very tight, it's incredibly punishing, and we can probably expect that if someone gets a bit offline and hits the wall, we're going to be in a safety car situation straight away.
Yeah, in one of the other races today, in French Formula 4, we did see such an incident occur where one driver caught the barrier and there wasn't enough space behind for people to avoid him, and they all ended up piling up. And as you can see at the pictures now, the curbs used at this circuit are just normal road curbs.
Yeah, they just paint them and go. It's kind of a bit like Macau in places. It really does have that proper old school vibe, and there's parts of the circuit, such as that one, Foch, we were just looking at there, where the drivers really clamber all over the track. Tepe Naturi in the Carlin pit, taking a bit of a while to get going. I wonder if we have a problem with his car there. In fact, all the Carlin cars are still waiting to go out. There goes Billy Munger. He was just starting to pull away, but Christian Hahn was still in his pit box, so I wonder if they had some sort of technical problem down there.
Possibly, and interestingly, our paddock here is based on grass. So as they drive up to the pit lane and onto the track, their tyres are going to be covered in leaves and soot and dust and stuff, so they may be also cleaning up the wheels before they go on track.
And the driver's coming back round into the pits for another reconnaissance lap, taking the opportunity to gain as much experience around the track as they can do, because it really is invaluable. And I expect the opening phases of this race are going to be particularly crucial, that big sprint down towards the first braking zone, because as is often the case with these street circuits being so narrow, we can expect overtaking to be extremely difficult in the race, and really that is putting it mildly. I've commentated on quite a lot of races from Po, and it has to be said, this is always a very, very challenging circuit to overtake on. Just leading them out of the pits there, you saw the number 30 car, the Motor Park machine with the Red Bull livery on. That is Liam Lawson, our pole sitter, the 17-year-old, and winner of one of the opening races at Paul Ricard a few weeks ago. So obviously one to keep an eye on there in this field.
Yeah, he is backed by Red Bull of many Formula 1 World titles. And he only received his Red Bull sponsorship at the beginning of this year after winning the Toyota Racing Series title. And that also races on very tight, twisty circuits, not street circuits, but they're still very old school. So he should be well experienced ahead of this race, even though it's a street circuit debut.
Yeah, he's from Pukekohe, where they have one of the circuits that they race on in the Toyota Racing Series New Zealand. So at least he had the benefit of one home race. But as is always the big challenge for drivers coming over from the Antipodes to race in Europe, is they've got an awful lot of new circuits to learn. Of course, exactly the same goes for the other Red Bull junior team member in this field, his motorpark teammate Yuki Tsunoda, who has come over from Japan, and he also has got a lot of unfamiliar new circuits to visit as well. And of course the other aspect, I suppose, Elliot, about the Po Grand Prix is the circuit being so compact. This is pretty much the highest, well, it is the highest level form of single-seater racing that goes on here. It's not a track that they're going to get to race on, for example, if they go on to race in Formula 2 or Formula 1, because those cars don't race on this circuit. So it's a really unusual, quirky venue. And when we look at the grid, which team do we find pretty much monopolising the top places? It's the one who've got experience of this track from last year.
Yeah, Motorpark is one of the slickest Formula 3 operations of recent years. It won Macau the last 2 years, which is a very similar circuit that's got some straights but a lot of tight, twisty sections. And it's been aiming for a title for a long time, but it still hasn't achieved it.
It's probably worth covering off that not everything went entirely according to plan for Motorpark at the start of the last race, where, funnily enough, we had the same top two drivers on the grid with Liam Lawson on pole position and Marino Sato alongside him. That's what we've got today. That's what we had a few weeks ago for the second race at Paul Ricard. But Lawson, who we're looking at now, did not get away very well at all, and then things went from bad to worse.
Yeah, he had a bit of a clutch problem at the start of the second Paul Ricard race, putting him into the clutches of, no pun intended, his teammate Yuki Tsunoda. Yeah, and as they were coming down the straight, he pulled alongside, didn't realise his teammate was there, and they touched wheels, and very angry Helmut Marko they came along. But both of them managed to finish the race, Lawson on the podium, Yuki Tsunoda in sixth, so it showed their talent that even with damaged cars, they were still getting good results.
Didn't know his teammate was there was a very generous use of the commentator's prerogative, I thought. Far be it for me to suggest that he knew exactly where his teammate was, but certainly he came off, and he did get a penalty for that as well at the end of the race.
Yeah, but he got demoted from second to fourth from the results, but he's still in the lead of the championship by 3 points over teammate Sato, who is on 35 points.
And there is Sato alongside him on the front row of the grid. Now, the big job for Sato, who comes into this race on 35 points in the championship, 3 points behind our championship leader, Liam Lawson, is get that car off the line as well as he possibly can, because although he's not on the racing line, he is on the inside line, and that is by far going to be his best chance to win this race.
Yes. As we see at the back of the shot there, the sweeping turn one right-hander, there's actually about 10 inches of curb prior to the barrier, so you can't go super close to the inside line, so he may have to stay alongside with his teammate. Going to turn two as well, we have a surface change, so just on the apex of the corner there's a different layer of asphalt, which can destabilise the cars and help one driver or punish another, depending how hard they're holding their steering wheel.
Exactly. We just saw Julian Hanses, the third of three Motorpark cars inside the top three, and the only driver stopping them from sweeping the top four positions is this man, Lucas Dunner, the only man to come away from Paul Ricard with two podium finishes. Really got off to a good start for Teo Martin Motorsport. He will start from fourth position, and he bumped Yuki Tsunoda down into fifth place on the grid. And you can see that every shot we get of the crowd, there's a mix of people going for umbrellas and not. There's quite a bit of wind clearly in the trees, and it really does look like the conditions could change at any moment as we take a look at Yuki Tsunoda pulling into his 5th place grid spot.
Yeah, and Yuki's one of 2 Honda-backed drivers as well in this field, which includes Tepe Notori of Carlin, who will be starting the race further down the order after being one of the drivers who crashed in qualifying.
And not the only driver to find the wall during qualifying as well. We've had actually quite a few drivers into the barriers over the course of the last day or two of practicing and qualifying at the Pau Grand Prix. But so far, we've not had anybody ruled out of the weekend due to damage. In fact, we had a really quite impressive turnaround by the Carlin team yesterday as we look at one of their drivers, Nikolai Kiergaard, might correct myself, not Carlin, but Double R, after Linus Lundqvist went into the barrier.
Yeah, so he took off 2 wishbones on his Double R racing car in free practice yesterday, and that was about 6 minutes into the session. His team managed to repair both wishbones and get him out for the final 8 minutes, and he returned on track, and I think he went 13th fastest, and he described the effort afterwards as a superhero achievement by Double R.
Yeah, and the preparation to turn that around is really impressive. Christian Hahn was really going well yesterday when we had the wetter conditions at Pau. He really seemed to get into his stride quite quickly, but then he had a problem in qualifying this morning, clipped the barrier, and is starting a little bit further down than I think he's got the pace to run. We have just had the signal that the start of the race has been delayed. I don't believe it's been delayed by a great amount because, as you can see, the team personnel are still leaving the grid. So I think we're just running ever so slightly behind, possibly because of the red flag we had during the preceding race. So we'll keep an eye on what's going to happen here. But as you can see, the drivers are all pretty much ready to go. And pending the last checks, we should be ready to get things underway.
Yeah, and all the cars are on slick tyres, despite the slight dots of rain. And this has been classified as a wet race. But because there's a lot of cloud cover, we're not going to get a lot of heat on the grid right now. So those tyres are likely to be getting very cold.
And of course, an ever-present problem at street circuits like this is the track surface tends not to be very abrasive. They're not as quick as your typical circuits, although Pau has got quite a few, or certainly more, I would say, quick corners compared to some other circuits that we see being used as temporary venues. So lower tyre temperatures are generally a bit of a feature of this kind of race. And there is Billy Munger, starting from 10th place in the grid. He had a 10th place at Paul Ricard in race 1. That was his best finish. He didn't score in the second race, so just the 1 point for Billy so far in the championship. And the crowd looking on at the action, getting ready as we are with a sense of anticipation for the beginning of the race. Now we've got the team's crews heading back out onto the track and more umbrellas going up. I wonder, and they've got obviously wet weather tyres on standby as well as replacement sets of slicks if they're needed as well. So it looks like we have got a little bit more of a delay here than we thought at first.
Yes, so when the drivers did their reconnaissance laps, they would have fed back what they saw and felt on the track to the teams, and that would have been relayed to the organisers, and they would have made a decision off of that whether they need to change to wet tyres now.
And of course, the teams will be keeping a very close eye on the skies. May have spotters around the circuit reporting back on whether the weather conditions are changing, and that appears to be an indication that the weather conditions are changing as well, because I see most of the fans have got hoods on and are putting umbrellas up. So is this going to prompt a few more people, or a few people, to consider switching to wet weather tyres in time for the start of the race? You can see that the cars have got their wet weather rain lights blinking at the back. That's because the race has already been declared a wet race some 12 or 13 minutes ago, which means the drivers are supposed to have their rain lights on, although I can see a couple of cars at the back of the grid, including Rui Andrade and Tepe Notori, who haven't got their lights on at the moment, but I'm sure they can sort that out. But it looks like we could have a couple more minutes here before we're ready to get things going.
Yes, and although they have to have the red light on that flashes at the back of the car when it is a wet race, they don't have to use wet tyres, which means we could see a difference of strategy here. Some drivers on wets, some drivers on slicks. If the cloud cover stays, I believe the wet tyre runners would get heat into their tyres quicker, and the slick drivers would be a little slower.
I could already see some slick tyres coming off drivers at the back of the grid. And really, based on what we've seen of the conditions so far today, we haven't really at any point had a sustained shower that's been long enough, I would say, to make a driver want to go out on full wet tyres. Of course, past performance is no indication of future performance, so it may well be that we do see some gambling going on, because particularly also, if you're down at the back of the grid, your chances of overtaking your way up through the order in a dry race are not very great. There's a much stronger incentive to consider maybe fitting a set of wets.
Yes, and along our pit straight there is a slight bump just around where the finish line is. And before that bump there is almost a dip in the track where when it rains a puddle will form. Now, if it continues to rain before the start, the drivers at the back of the grid are going to be disadvantaged here, because they're going to be driving straight into the water, while the people at front are going to be on the, almost you could say, higher surface, and will have a drier track going forward.
What you did just see a shot of there, which you don't always see at Po, is the river that runs just to the left of your picture as you look now. There is part of a grandstand over it at one point, and you could see the strength of the rain falling into the river there, so that gives you some indication of how wet things are getting out there as we wait to see when this one is going to be flagged away.
Yeah, and although rain is a common occurrence at Po, the very first race, or the very first Grand Prix in 1933, hit by snow.
Indeed it was. Down onto the grid to hear from the man from Michelin.
Pretty cool. It's poor. It's changing weather. Difficult choice of tire.
For sure. It's a complicated day. 1 minute it looks like it's going to rain, the next minute it's looking like it's going to dry. The difficulty will be if they change into rains and then it gets dry. It'll be interesting at the end.
But from a Michelin point of view, you are ready. You have all the products here.
Yes, we're confident, obviously. We want to make sure that the teams have the best choice and have the best technical assistance. At the same time, it comes down to strategy. I had thought that some teams might choose and some might stay on slicks. That being said, it looks like everyone's going to go on wet, so we'll be...
What would you do?
I think I'd take the chance on slicks.
Okay, we'll see who does. Thank you, Craig.
And as Greg Cool down there on the video, on the grid, was being interviewed by Alfredo, you heard the whistle going off, which means time to clear the grid, and sure enough, everyone's scampering clear. Now, he was saying that all the drivers are switching over to wet weather tyres, Elliot, but I can't see a great deal of evidence that. Certainly there's Marina Sato, as far as my admittedly somewhat shonky eyesight can discern, still on slicks.
And it looks like a lot of the trolleys they're bringing back, there are wet tyres still on the trolleys.
And certainly given the the conditions as they look, I'd be surprised if there were that many drivers deciding to change, but we will get as good a look as we can at all the cars as they pull away. Certainly from the point of view of the neutral, what you always like to see in conditions like this is at least one person having a bit of a gamble. I mean, it wouldn't be a mid-90s wet Formula One race without Jean Alesi out there on slicks. But certainly looking at the left-hand side of the grid, driver's left side of the grid, the first four cars there, led by Liam Lawson, all on slicks. Marino Sato definitely on slicks as well. So I reckon most of the front runners will have stayed on the same dry weather tyres.
Yeah, and we haven't seen any drops of rain on the camera lens for a few minutes now, so it looks like the rain may have actually stopped as well.
Yeah, we've definitely got Lucas Dunner on slicks as well, and Nikolai Kiergaard.
Billy Munger, it looks like. So the back 3 rows of the grid, I think, are on wet tyres.
Right, okay, well that could make things very interesting indeed. You're right, it does look like a bit of texture on Billy Munger's front left tyre there as far as I can see. But let's get a look as the cars now finally and belatedly pull away on their formation lap. And immediately begin ducking and weaving from side to side to build up the warmth in their tyres. That is indeed Billy Munger on wet weather tyres. And also a little bit further behind him, Jack Doohan, who is starting from 12th position. The young Australian is also on wet weather tyres as well. But I think Billy Munger, 10th on the grid, is our highest starter on wet weather tyres. And Jack Doohan, 12th place, immediately behind him on the grid, has also opted for wets. It's oh no, I'd correct myself in fact, because Guillaume Samaya, 9th on the grid in front of Billy Munger, is also on wet weather tyres.
Yes, and although some teams change, we need to know if the slick tyres are also brand new tyres or if they've already been ran this weekend and they've taken a bit of the edge off them to rubber them in.
All right, formation lap is underway, and the leaders of the field working their way through Foch already, and they'll be coming back around for the start of the race. And you can see a little bit of debris and litter being blown around the course. They wind their way through the Parc Beaumont. Lots of this circuit is surrounded and bordered by trees, and that in the stronger light tends to throw shadows onto the track. It makes it harder for some areas of the track to dry up as quickly as others. And I think the drivers will already be finding that the track now is probably feeling a little bit slipperier than when they did their reconnaissance laps out of the pits, because we did have that brief burst of rain. There's a look at our grid. Liam Lawson on pole position alongside Marino Sato. Julian Hanses makes it 3 Motorpark cars in the top 3 alongside Lucas Donner. Yuki Tsunoda starts from 5th alongside Nikolai Kiergaard. Christian Hahn, who went so well in practice, is only 7th alongside Linus Lundqvist, who bounced back from a hit with the wall yesterday. Guillaume Samaya, who was up on the podium in Paul Ricard, starts down in 9th on wet weather tyres, as does Billy Munger alongside him in 10th. Oliver Stante is 11th. Jack Doohan has also plumped for wet weather tyres. He starts from 12th. Behind them are Cameron Dass and Callum Williams for Fortec. And at the back of the grid, Rui Andrade and Tepe Nutori, completing our 16-car grid for the third race of the 2019 Euroformula Open, the first of our 2 races this weekend at Pau. Make sure you do join us again tomorrow for the Pau Grand Prix, which is what our 4th race of the Euroformula Open Championship will be. And we will be flagging that one away at about 20 past 3 in the afternoon local time. That's 20 past 2 for those of you back in the UK. And you should also be able to follow qualifying live at 40 minutes past 10 local time. We are about ready to get going, however. Liam Lawson on your right on pole position. Marino Sato alongside him on the left, looking to get a good way. It is a quick start, and Lawson's across immediately, and he fends off Sato. Julian Hanses is trying to go around the outside of Sato to get up into second position. I saw a little bit of tyre smoke further back. I think that was Yuki Tsunoda. Hanses is going around the outside in third. Tsunoda is all over the curb on the inside, but it's Liam Lawson leading the field away, and still behind him, his Team Motorpark teammates remain side by side, but Hanses, I think, has got the inside line, and yellow flags at the left-hander upon Oscar, as we usually have on the first lap of the race, because it is so tight around this part of the circuit. The cars wind their way around Lycée for the first time and accelerate off into the Parc Beaumont, and this is where we're going to begin to get a feel for which of the drivers have made the correct decision in terms of slicks or wets.
Yes, and it looks like Billy Munger's already made the best decision, because he's gone from 10th place to 7th by the first corner, and he's already hassling the 6th place car of one of the Teo Martin Motorsport cars.
Well, that will be the treaded wet weather tyres getting up to the correct operating temperature very quickly indeed, but already up at the front, I think Liam Lawson doesn't look very shy to me about leaning on those slicks as he feeds into the chicane, and they come around the super fast left and right kinks, which lead them back to the start-finish straight to begin lap 2. There goes Liam Lawson in the lead. Julian Hanses is indeed up into second place ahead of Marino Sato. Here comes Billy Munger on Yuki Tsunoda, trying to find a way down the inside for 6th position. He has to back out of that one, though. Tsunoda holds on to 6th for now.
Yeah, and as we saw, Nikolai Kiergaard was up to 4th place as well. He started further down the order, and he's also the 2nd place of the rookie trophy drivers, which also includes Tsunoda, Munger, Lundqvist, and Doohan and Andrade at the back. It looks like Tori hasn't got around the first lap.
Linus Lundqvist has, though. He was around the outside, I think, making a move, or trying to make a move on Christian Hahn. We'll see if he's got that position. And Billy Munger's dropped back a little bit off the tail of Yuki Tsunoda. He's now got, he has now got Christian Hahn all over the back of him, trying to find a way through. That's an all-Carlin battle then, and Munger already starting to drift the back of that car out. I wonder if those wet weather tyres not finding the amount of moisture that they need to really work properly, because it is already looking as though Munger is holding up Hahn quite a lot here now. We'll keep an eye on their set times, but you really don't need to, because you can see from how much he's getting crossed up as he comes around the right-hander and down towards the start-finish line again. And sure enough, Munger is out-accelerated and Christian Hahn is by, and Linus Lundqvist is going to be too.
And further back, we've got 2 of the Teo Martin cars going 3 wide, and one of them going into the pits. And our picture's gone back to the Hahn-Lundqvist-Munger battle, and Lundqvist is past Munger too. And it looks like under the trees, Munger does have the grip, but everywhere else he's sliding a lot.
Yeah, and unless a lot more trees spring up, he's going to be in some serious trouble because he is losing places at the moment very, very quickly indeed. A couple more cars behind him getting backed up. I can see Callum Williams there putting pressure on Cameron Dass, who in turn is right up the back of Aldo Fastante as they come around the Lycée, giving him a little bit of a nudge with the front wing there, I think. Fastante looking somewhat tentative. They round the Parc Beaumont and off onto the rest of the lap. Meanwhile, Liam Lawson is not having any such problems and is checking out at the front.
Yeah, it looks like Jack Doohan's just come out of the pit lane. And our timing screen shows that Joel Hermes Samaya is also in there. And the battle goes back to Fastante, who's right on the rear of Billy Munger now. So we've got a 4-car train going through the twisty second sector of this lap.
And Guillaume Samaya was another one of the drivers who'd started on wet, so I think he decided fairly early on to give up on that gamble. Billy Munger persevering with it for the time being, although no longer, I feel, because he is heading into the pits, and that car looked very squirmy indeed. And Aldo Fastante, as they come past the pits, has lost a position to Cameron Dass. There comes Billy Munger into the Carlin pit for a fresh set of boots. Liam Lawson, meanwhile, is just logging the purple fastest sector times as you please up at the sharp end. A new set of, or at least a replacement set of slick tyres go on to Billy Munger's car. That is going to drop him completely out of contention for the points. It looked like a good gamble for the first half of lap 1.
Yeah, and we got a yellow at turn 4 now. So that's at the start of the second sector. There's a hairpin. Doesn't show any cars there at the moment, but looking at the other cars that have pitted, they may come into play as traffic for our leading drivers.
Yeah, we can't see what has caused that yellow flag at the moment. We just had Rui Andrade passing through that sector of the lap, but he still seems to be moving as far as our timing screens can tell us. But there comes Liam Lawson by to start another lap. We're all clear now at turn 4, so whatever happened there, that's the Lycée, the very, very sharp right-hander. So whatever had happened there is all right now. But Lawson has built himself up a very handy 2.7 second lead up at the sharp end. Hanses has in turn dropped Marino Sato by over 2 seconds, who then has got a 3-second lead over Nikolai Kiergaard, but he has got serious pressure from Lucas Dunner for 5th place.
Yeah, and it looks like Cameron Dass in 8th place has a position between himself and his teammate Callum Williams now. Oh, we've got a message that car 14 was the one that hit the barrier at turn 4.
That's Yuki Tsunoda.
Yeah, so that was one of the 2 Red Bull drivers. And
sure enough, he has dropped quite a long way back as well. He's down into 14th place, so he must have lost quite a bit of time with that incident up at the Lycée. We may have a replay of that later on, but that is very significant in the battle between the 2 Red Bull Junior drivers as Liam Lawson continues to lead as he pleases, and I think really starting to enjoy himself around this Pau circuit now. He comes around once more, having already set fastest sectors in the first 2 sectors and makes it 3 for a new fastest lap of 1:11.853. He's over half a second a lap faster than the rest of the field at the moment. Liam Lawson absolutely streaking away.
Yeah, and he's going to be coming into the traffic soon because we have Jack Doohan and Billy Munger fighting 1 or 2 corners ahead of him. They don't want to be lapped, but they were 2 of the drivers that started on the wet tyres and have since changed to slicks.
That's the last thing you want to have to be contemplating in a race like this if you're the leader, is having to lap traffic. It happens fairly infrequently, as you would imagine in this class of racing, where all the drivers have identical cars and the races are typically around half an hour's duration. But it is potentially going to be a problem for Liam Lawson. The good news for him is he's got a good 3-second gap back to Julian Hanses behind him. He's not under any immediate threat. As into the pits comes Rui Andrade. He was also on wet weather tyres, and he seems to have stuck with it longer than anybody else, hoping for that rain. But alas for him, it wasn't to be. But what a rare sight to get to see so many pit stops going on in the Euroformula Open.
Yes, and it's a very interesting one as well, because this is a temporary pit lane. This normally serves as the roadside most days of the year. And we're looking back at the battle for 9th place between Aldo Fastante and Callum Williams. They're right next to each other as they cross the line. And we're looking at 4th place now. Nikolai Kjærgaard, Lucas Dunner, who's going for a move down the inside of the second corner.
That's a fantastic pass by Dunner. Oh, but he gets a little bit loose at the exit. He covers off. He covers left and right, in fact, as they come out of the corner, possibly asking a little bit too much of his defensive driving there, but Dunner covering it off for now. But he must have had an absolutely fantastic run coming out of the chicane to have that kind of speed advantage over Nikolai Kjærgaard as they came down to Gar. And Dunner throwing it up the inside for 4th position, and off he goes in pursuit of what would be a 3rd consecutive podium position if he's able to make up one more place before we check a flag this one. But Nikolai Kjærgaard doesn't seem to have terrific pace at the moment. He seems pretty loose coming through the corners. He is on slick tyres. He's not one of the drivers who stayed out there on wet weather tyres, but I wonder if he's perhaps set his car up more for wet conditions and he's finding it not to his liking as the track just gets drier and drier.
Yeah, he did make a good start. He made up several places, but he shouldn't be worried about the driver behind him because Guilherme Samar is actually a lap down. So he's holding off Christian Hahn from Carlin and Linus Lundqvist behind them. And going back to the pit straight, Liam Lawson has a 4.3 second lead now, with a further 3 second gap to Marino Sato in 3rd.
And another fastest lap and another half a second drilled into his opponents. Liam Lawson really at one with the Po circuit now, and just continuing to edge his way ahead. Marino Sato is dropping somewhat more slowly back from Julian Hanses. What I'm interested in now is what kind of pace does Lucas Dunner have now? He's in free air. Is he going to be able to chase down Marino Sato in front of him? There's no indication that's the case so far, as we take a look back at Yuki Tsunoda, who has dropped out of the points positions. He's down in 11th place at the moment. He has actually just done the fastest middle sector of the lap, so he has got a good decent turn of performance in that Motorpark car. We've seen the Motorpark team looking pretty quick all weekend long, but he has got 19 seconds to recover to get onto the tail of Callum Williams, and we've got someone in the barrier. That is Christian Hahn, and for the 2nd time today, I think that is, Elliot, Christian Hahn has found the barriers.
Yeah, we're going to see a replay here. He got very wide and he hit the curbing at turn 7/8, and he's gone straight into the barriers there. So in qualifying earlier this morning, he had a similar incident where his rear wheel hit one of the barriers and it kind of tore off the rim and put him out.
I tell you what, that'll have woke him up, and it certainly woke the marshal standing up behind the barriers at Foch up as well. But as always, terrific effort by the Po team to crane that car out about as quickly as you could possibly ask for. And that, I think, is going to spare us a safety car period. So fantastic work by them. Enjoy the study of the underside of the Dallara F317 chassis, where you get a chance to have a look at it as Christian Hahn's car is craned out of the way, and we're already back to green flags around the track as the marshal's crane does its job. I bet that's a fun job. As the rest of the field passed on by, and Liam Lawson once again was quickest through the 1st sector that time around. Billy Munger coming down the start-finish straight, taking a close look in his rearview mirrors as he sees Jack Doohan beginning to loom ever larger in them as Liam Lawson goes by on another lap, now over 5 seconds clear.
Yeah, and the yellow flags from the Hahn crash stopped a battle for an 8th place now between Aldo Festante and Callum Williams. They were separated by less than a tenth when they went across the line 2 laps ago, and there's 2 tenths between them this time round. We're going to see them come through the final corner now, hopefully. We'll see the gap between them again. But they've got 17 seconds in hand to Yuki Tsunoda, so they look pretty comfortable in the points right now.
Yeah, but remember, that was 19 seconds the last time we looked at that gap, so Tsunoda's clearly got a bit of pace. May also just had things fall his way a little bit with that yellow flag, but nonetheless catching in. Wow, just look at Liam Lawson hustling it as he comes down towards the fast chicane. As we switch our focus to that battle that you mentioned, Elliot, there is Aldo Festante in the Teo Martin car ahead of Callum Williams, and as you say, Williams has dropped back a little bit, and Yuki Tsunoda absolutely ripping into the pair of them now. The gap down to 14 seconds. That delay that set him back, he'll be absolutely kicking himself because he's quicker than Liam Lawson by almost half a second that time around. Yuki Tsunoda's got some absolutely serious pace going on. He is now up into the points as we've had another driver drop back, but he has got the potential to pick up a few more if he can get onto the tail of this pair that we're looking at now.
Yeah, and Yuki Tsunoda also set the fastest lap, which I believe is several tenths faster than his teammate Liam Lawson. has managed, who previously had the fastest lap. And it looks like Rui Andrade just got past Christian Hahn, who was the driver who crashed, but he's still 2 laps down at the moment from our leaders.
Yeah, that's the legacy of heading out on those wet weather tyres and keeping them on, I think, a couple of laps longer than anyone else.
Yeah, and we're looking at number 26, who's Linus Lundqvist. It looked like he's on the back of the battle for 4th, 5th, and that's
Yuki Tsunoda coming in. Well, that's a puzzle.
Yes, he was going very quickly, although his second sector is 2 seconds slower than the drivers in front. So we're wondering what's happened and why he's coming to the pits here.
So has he clipped the barrier, perhaps, while he was leaning so aggressively on that car in his bid to catch up to the rest of the field? I can't see anything that's obviously out of whack, but you don't need to do an awful lot to the suspension on one of these cars to cause a problem. A pulling into the pits, so it's not as if he's serving a penalty that we're unaware of. But that they're having a little bit of tug on the suspension. Maybe he just feels something isn't quite right, and this is not a circuit where you want to have something fail on your car around a corner like Casino or Park Beaumont or something like that. If it just goes, you will be straight into a barrier at well over 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's a shame that it's got out of the car now, but we're looking back at the battle for 5th place, and looks like there's 3 cars, although is one of them the Lapjel Hermes Samaya?
That does still look like Guillaume Samaya, yeah, in between Nikolai Kiergaard, the blue and red car at the front of them, and then Linus Lundqvist in the black car with the blue and yellow flashes, the third of those cars. And you're quite right, and that's a pretty telltale sign as to what's gone on there. A seriously scuffed front left Michelin on Yuki Tsunoda's car, so there was perhaps not quite enough control going along with the speed, and there certainly was an awful lot of speed once he was trying to reclaim his way back into the top 10. That promotes Billy Munger back into 10th position. I bet he never thought that he would have a chance of picking up a point after the absolute disastrous start to his race on those wet weather tyres. He is now up into 10th place. He is 35 seconds, however, behind 9th position, so he's going to need a big slice of luck, or more likely a safety car period, to get into that one. Now, I got to say, what we really need here is for Guillaume Samaya to either let Linus Lundqvist get through and lap him and take a crack at Nikolai Kiergaard, or even to unlap himself from the car ahead, which, to be honest, it looks like he might be capable of doing. But either way, to let battle be joined here as they come into Lycée. And Nikolai Kiergaard really, well, he has been some way off the pace. He's within a second a lap of Liam Lawson now, and that appears to be more a result of Liam Lawson perhaps just backing off a little bit at the front, or perhaps we've even just had a few more drops of rain, because actually the field as a whole, we've got a spin and into the wall, and out of the race goes Nikolai Kiergaard. Well, he didn't look particularly comfortable, and even less so now, and he's gone and done pretty much exactly what Christian Hahn did. Not quite made it all the way into the barrier at Foch, but into the tyre wall at pretty high speed. As you can see, they are 4 deep there, so it absorbs a lot of the impact. And quite wisely, Nikolai Kiergaard getting out of the cockpit before the super efficient pole marshals winch the car out of the way, pops the steering wheel back on his Carlin run machine with a little bit of difficulty. But there goes Nikolai Kiergaard then. That moves Linus Lundqvist up into 5th position ahead of Cameron Dass. That's going to move Billy Munger up into 9th place then. And Jack Doohan behind him will take the final points place. As things stand for 10th, we've still got 14 laps of action to go up, Poe.
Yeah, and it's Samaya has good reason not to let drivers lap him now, because he's now up to 12th, I believe. So he could get some points. And in the previous laps before Kiergaard crashed, he was up to 3 seconds off the pace of those in front. And he crashes at the same corner as Christian Hahn did earlier in the race, which is off camber, and you always have to make sure you're in the correct gear, because if you try and hit the brakes, you may lock them very easily, and you can easily slide into the corner, just as we saw Kiergaard did.
Yeah, clearly Kiergaard was acting as the cork in the bottle there, and now that he's gone, these two are really able to show us a bit more of what they're able to do. And quite clearly, Guillaume Samaya, who did set the fastest lap in the opening race of the year at Paul Ricard, is showing that he's got a bit more speed in his car. Samaya, of course, one of the drivers who started on the wet weather tyres. That really didn't work out for him. And he's dropped back into the pack as a result, but pressing on now. So we look a little bit further back in the field. There goes Jack Doohan. He's now in 10th place, and the occupant of the final point. He's got Julian Hanses immediately behind him. Hanses is in second position. That's how mixed up things are around Po at the moment. And back to the start-finish line, where I think our leader is about to emerge.
And having Doohan in front of Hanses may bring him into the clutches of his teammate Marino Sato, but he's also been closed in by Lucas Dunner, who was 1.3 seconds faster than him on the last lap.
Yeah, Sato losing a fair bit of time there. He's on it on this lap, actually. He's just done his personal best first sector time, no doubt responding to the emergence of that threat from Lucas Dunner behind him. Here comes Liam Lawson as he begins his 14th lap of Po. Billy Munger a little bit further behind him. And that is the super fast Park Beaumont section of the circuit, which leads into Foch, that notorious chicane which every year claims a raft of drivers when we come for the Po Grand Prix and its various support races, and has so far already taken 2 out of this race. Callum Williams there in 8th position, pressing on in his pursuit of Aldo Fastanti ahead of him, who this was a much closer battle a few laps ago. As you think you said, Elliot, there was just a couple of tenths in it, but Fastanti's perhaps got a little bit more comfortable and has managed to eke out a bit more of a margin.
Yeah, we can see Lawson hitting the limit there, going as fast as he can. He actually dipped into the 1:11 to get the last lap, which he hadn't done since earlier on in the race. And that's propelled him to almost 8 seconds ahead of teammate Julian Hanses, who was quick in this first sector, but I imagine did have a tow from Jack Doohan.
Yeah, and now we have the ever-present, if you like, the psychological challenge for a driver who has, clearly mullered the field on outright performance so far. He's, as you say, 8 seconds to the good. How hard do you now push? Because if you push at too much less than 100%, you can suddenly find the track starts to feel different. It feels less comfortable. You become more aware of what's going on in terms of the noises that your car's making. Backing off too much from the limit for a racing driver can also be a challenge all of its own. It is, if you like, the Ayrton Senna at Monaco in 1988 problem when he found himself in the barrier at Portier. That is what Liam Lawson is now having to deal with. It's really pretty much, apart from the odd lapped car, the last challenge left for him to master in this race, when he has put the best part of half a second a lap into his rivals each time he's come around. He wants to keep himself fairly close to the limit. He doesn't want his tyres losing temperature. He certainly doesn't look in any danger of dropping off the limit as we watch him lean on it through Foch, now around in the long looping right-hander at Buisson. But of course, what he can't afford to do is just snag a wheel on a curb, clip a barrier. You can lose a race oh so easily around the streets of Po.
Yeah, and this morning's qualifying session was the first time these drivers got to run in the dry, and Lawson said that with every lap he was learning new things. So I imagine he's built up quite a bank of data in his head at the moment, but I believe his teammate Yuki Tsunoda, who has retired from this race, does hold the fastest lap, and that is worth 1 point in Euroformula Open. So he may be wanting to reclaim that.
Certainly would make sense, and he is pressing on. He did a 1:11.6 the last time around. Julian Hanses 0.6 of a second slower, and that battle for third place between Marino Sato and Lucas Dunner is very slowly closing up. Lucas Dunner taking in the region of about 4 or 5 tenths of a second a lap out of him. There's 2.5 seconds between them. There is enough time, I think, for Lucas Dunner to catch Marino Sato, but of course what you have to consider, if he's only catching him at that kind of rate, it's probably not going to be enough for him to launch an attack for the position. But let's wait and see until battle is joined before making a call on that one.
And a common feature we're seeing here is the drivers who have lapped runners in front of them are going very quickly in the first sector and setting personal bests, whereas the drivers who are running out on their own, such as Liam Lawson and Lucas Dunner, they're going slower. So that's helping drivers like Julian Hanses create a gap.
And that's because they're able to get a tow through the faster first sector of the lap where there's more of the straights. Yeah, clearly helping out from there. There went Billy Munger in 9th place. He has still got Jack Doohan edging towards him. There's a 2-second gap between the pair of them. There goes Marino Sato in 3rd place.
And we did actually see the marshals down the pit straight there waving the blue flags for Jack Doohan, and he's handing the place, well, he's letting himself be lapped by Hanses now. And we're seeing Marino Sato now, who is still 3.9 seconds behind his teammate.
Yeah, so you have to wonder if in short order Jack Doohan's going to start to become a bit of a problem for Marino Sato as well. And Marino Sato in third place. He's got most of the field behind him, but not the one person he needs behind him, which of course is the only driver ahead of him in the championship, which is Liam Lawson, who continues to lead and continues to be the only driver lapping Po sub 72 seconds. Now almost 10 seconds ahead of Julian Hanses, but as you observed, Elliot, he's not got the fastest lap for the race just yet, which is probably why we're continuing to see him pushing as hard as he is doing. And we're just scanning down the timesheets to see where, if any, battles may appear from. Lucas Dunner dropped a little bit back from Marino Sato the last time around.
Yeah, and Cameron Dass, who was battling with his teammate Callum Williams early in the race, is closing in rapidly on Linus Lundqvist. He was only a tenth of a second faster the last time round, but there's only 1.5 seconds between them now. Once he gets to around second, he will be able to catch a toe down the main straight.
There is Lucas Dunner, pair of podiums for him in the first race weekend of the year at Paul Ricard, but he will need to go some if he's going to add another one this weekend. He's back in the Euroformula Open for a second season. He's switched over from the DriveX camp to Theo Martin and had a strong start to the year at Paul Ricard. In fact, from pole position, took the lead at the beginning of the first race, but then got jumped by the two Red Bull Junior drivers when there was a safety car restart, but nonetheless put himself in a position potentially to challenge for the championship, and if he's able to deliver another solid points score here, he'll do his championship chances no harm at all. But not quite gaining on Marino Sato now. It's starting to look a little bit more settled as we move into the final phase of the race, and perhaps some of these drivers, Elliot, are just becoming a little bit more minded to make sure that they do see the checkered flag, having got this close to it.
Yes, it's very easy to lose points at street circuits, so they'll be intending to earn them. But having said that, Liam Lawson is still pulling away up front. He's faster than the drivers immediately behind him in the first, second and third sectors of the lap.
And yet I can't help but think that maybe the best have gone from his tyres at this point, because we're not seeing him trouble the fastest lap times as convincingly as we did before, even as the sun now comes out at Po, treating us to 3 seasons in one race pretty much now, and that will be perhaps helping the track conditions to warm up a little bit. The surface will have cleaned up a lot compared to the start of the race when we saw how blustery it was and all the leaves blowing around on the track, as into the pits comes Aldo Fastante from 7th position, so that's going to hand that place to Callum Williams. Now, why has he come in? Has he also clipped the barrier as we suspect Marino Sato may have done? Whatever the cause...
Yuki Tsunoda.
Yuki Tsunoda, you're quite right. I think they looks like they're clearing out his side pods. Has he picked up a lot of debris? Has he got overheating or something like that? It looked to me like one of the mechanics emerged with something in his hands that he'd pulled out the side pod, so perhaps Fastante was seeing his engine temperatures climb too high. And
he's only lost 1 position from that, because the drivers behind were all the ones who started on wet tyres and switched to slicks. So he still has a few seconds in hand to Billy Munger and Jack Doohan, which is maybe a strategic master plan by Theo Martin there. Well,
always better to finish a race in 8th than not finish it when you were running 7th.
Yeah, and having said that, the battle behind between Billy Munger and Jack Doohan is also for 3rd place on the rookie podium. So we have Linus Lundqvist in 2nd, who's in 5th overall in this race, and Liam Lawson, our leader, who will be taking the rookie trophy win as well if he finishes this race. We've got a podium battle happening further down the order. And that pit stop by Aldo Fastante means quite remarkably, we've now only got 7 drivers on the lead lap, which, I don't know, that's surely approaching some kind of record for the Euroformula Open. It's not the sort of thing we see very often, but with quite a few drivers having gambled on wet weather tyres at the start and quickly found it not to their liking, and with others hitting trouble later on in the race, that really has played into the hands of Liam Lawson. You look at him now passing out of your screen, and here comes Julian Hansen now in 2nd position. That gives a pretty good indication of just how big the gap between the pair of them is. It's now up to 13.2 seconds. So Liam Lawson very comfortably in the lead with 5 laps remaining. And here is the rest of the field straggling some way behind him. Billy Munger there, you just saw past your screen, now in 9th place. It looks like somebody had a little bit of a lock-up perhaps at Pont Oscar. Was that Billy Munger running ahead of Jack Doohan that might have done that? We don't see for the time being, but there they are rounding Lycée, the super tight right-hander
at turn 4. And now the speed really begins to build as they go around the left-hander at Casino, passing the Casino on the right-hand side. Now the very long 180-degree corner of Park Beaumont, seriously quick. Straighten it up, dab on the brakes, flick through Foch. That may make it sound vastly easier than it is, because we've already seen twice today how difficult that can be. And now the slower right-hander at Buisson. And here the speed begins to build once more. The cars weave left and right. They tackle the chicane, plunge downhill, back towards the start-finish area, and that rounds off one more lap of this very demanding Pau circuit. And blue flags out once again for Jack Doohan. He lets Marino Sato this time through into 3rd place, and there is Lucas Dunner in 4th position, who's really keen to make a move on Marino Sato now. It could be crucial here. Is he going to get past Jack Doohan straight away? Yes, he is. So there goes our battle for 3rd and 4th place. This could be our last battle of the race brewing, I think, here, Elliot. The gap between the pair of them is now down to 1 second, and Lucas Dunner has got 4 laps left to try and get himself back on the podium.
Yeah, and it'd be very interesting if they still got the life in their tyres to really push to the limit here. But we did see Dunner set his personal best lap, I think, 2 laps ago, which is an impressive result. So maybe he's been saving his tyre life, waiting for a move to take place later in the race.
Oh, and he's very, very wide as he comes into Foch, though. He clambers all over the curbs. He managed to keep it all gathered up. And someone, I'm sure I just heard a crash just then. I may be mistaken, but we may find out in a moment. But that was definitely Lucas Dunner. And sure enough, it is Jack Doohan, I think, who's gone into the barriers there. And I think that is going to bring out quite possibly a safety car, unless we've got a crane down at that corner.
And that'll be out of 10th place, which is the final points position. He just goes straight on there, locks the front brakes, and goes straight into the barrier. Hopefully he'll be fine. You can see the replay now. And the marshals are looking how they can recover this vehicle. We don't know if there's a crane nearby. Our camera angle doesn't show it.
And sure enough, it is Jack Doohan, who I think is out of that car already, and they have got a crane down there, so that will give them a chance to get it out of their way. But another driver into the wall. And well, we've said already several times just how tough this circuit is. And let's just take a look back then at that battle for 3rd position. Sure enough, the gap between the pair of them had gone up a bit. Yellow flags being waved absolutely furiously at the exit of Foch, or the entry and the exit to Foch. That section of track has now been green flagged as the 3rd driver to be claimed by the barriers at Foch has their wrecked car winched clear. And we have got 2 laps remaining. Then Lucas Dunner, as we said, had dropped back a little bit from the tail of Marino Sato. And coming by at the start of the finish line, that is Ala Fastanti in 8th position, with Billy Munger closing in on him. In fact, the gap between them less than 0.8 of a second now. This then is the battle for 8th position. Fastanti, who we saw coming into the pits, we suspect there was perhaps something going on in his side pods that was perhaps causing the car to overheat a little bit. Is that now going to present Billy Munger with an opportunity to make up 1 more place? He's already on course for his best result of the season so far with 9th, but no doubt he would want to go 1 better than that if he gets the opportunity. And here comes our battle for 3rd.
Yeah, and this is between Marino Sato and Lucas Dunner, who are set near identical times on the last lap. But the yellow flags at turn 7, turn 8 would have helped Lucas Dunner close in there very slightly, as long as he wasn't going too quick. But with only 2 laps to go, it's very difficult to pressure a driver into a move from the distance he is back right now.
Yeah, his best hope really is that Marino Sato makes some kind of error and finds himself clipping a barrier or something like that. Of course, one of the problems if a driver does hit a barrier in front of you at a street race is not getting caught up in their accident as well. But for the time being, Sato looking extremely comfortable indeed, and I think Dunner's challenge, Elliot, really began to fade when he got a little bit loose up onto that curb just before we saw the crash for Jack Doohan.
Yeah, you could almost call that a crash saved rather than time lost. It did look very loose for those 2 corners. But the fact that he did set 1:13s, he has broken back into the 1:12s, but he is slower than all 3 of the cars ahead of him on lap times at the moment.
Race leader on the final lap, and he's already around it. He's just that quick today. Liam Lawson, 15 seconds ahead of his rivals. He comes through the chicane at Foch, and then the left-hander that brings him towards Buisson and there's just a couple of quick corners now separating him from the checkered flag and what would be victory. It has been an absolutely consummate drive so far by Liam Lawson in very tricky conditions at a very punishing racing circuit indeed. And here he comes out to take the checkered flag. The winner of race 3 is Liam Lawson, his second victory of the year for the Red Bull Junior driver from New Zealand, making amends after that disappointing second race at Paul Ricard a few weeks ago. And the rest of the field are going to take some time to make their way to the checkered flag. But here comes Julian Hanses for second place. Marino Sato does indeed hold on to third, ahead of Lucas Dunner, who is in fourth position. And we're now waiting for Linus Lundqvist to come round and be classified in fifth. But there is the man who has really stamped his authority all over Pau and put himself in a fantastic position to come back tomorrow and challenge to win the prestigious Pau Grand Prix trophy. Lundqvist does indeed finish fifth. That puts him second of the rookies, ahead of Cameron Dass in sixth place. Callum Williams is going to be seventh, I believe, ahead of Aldo Festante, who has held off Billy Munger for eighth position, and Guillaume Samaya in 10th. But what a recovery from the likes of Munger and Samaya, having started this race on wet weather tyres, come into the pits within the first few laps to switch over onto the slicks and still bring it home in the points. And it underlines the value of finishing on a day when several of their rivals didn't. And sure enough, Callum Williams has come across the line in seventh place, so that confirms our top 10 finishers on the road. That will be our provisional classification once, of course, the scrutineers have had a chance to check over the cars. But Elliot, I mean, that was really classy stuff from Liam Lawson. A crushing margin of victory, 16 seconds.
Yes, the fact that several drivers crashed maybe made his advantage look a little larger further down the order, but the fact that he was only 3 seconds covered second to fourth, but 16 seconds, so that's 5 times that, covered the gap between Lawson and teammate Hanses in second place.
Yep, and this is exactly what Red Bull hire drivers like this to do. I mean, we had a bit of friction, certainly, between him and Yuki Tsunoda in the last race when they clashed. I think the Red Bull Junior team like their drivers to show a little bit of aggression. They also like them to show blistering speed, and we have certainly seen that from Liam Lawson today. An emphatic victory. You can't simply put that one down to Motor Park having the cars dialed in, because he had 3 other drivers with him in the same team, and look how far ahead he is.
Yeah, he was one of the drivers who didn't have a toe on many laps at all, because he rarely encountered lap traffic. But on his last lap, even when he weaved across the finish line, he was over a second faster than basically everyone else on the grid.
So a superb triumph there for Liam Lawson. I think the crowd at Pau have seen a highly entertaining race there. Certainly one that was not short of incidents and even a few mid-race pit stops, which is not something we see a terrible amount of in the Euroformula Open for fairly obvious reasons. But nonetheless, plenty to keep the neutral entertained. So Liam Lawson comes in, of course, as well as being our outright winner. He will also be our rookie winner for this race, and that will extend his lead at the top of the championship as well. We only had 11 drivers running at the end of that one. Jack Doohan, Nikolai Kiergaard, Yuki Tsunoda, Christian Hahn and Tepe Naturi all finding the barriers during that 27-lap race.
Yes, and the fact that teammate Yuki Tsunoda crashed out this race means retired, means Liam Lawson now has a 14-point lead under our provisional results over teammate Marino Sato, with Lucas Dunner up to third place in the standings on 43 points. Then we have Linus Lundqvist, who's jumped all the way up to fourth, and I believe he was in sixth in the standings coming into this race on 33 points. Then Tsunoda's dropped down with 27. Guilherme Samaya, who did a good job even though he was several laps down, to stay in the points, and he's now on 24. Although, having said that, Julian Hanser's taken his first podium in F3. That's jumped him past, and he's now on 25 points. And we got our results up on the screen now.
Yep, so there is a confirmation of Liam Lawson home by 16 seconds ahead of Julian Hanses. Marino Sato in third. A clean sweep of the podium for Team Motorpark. Fantastic stuff for them. Lucas Dunner in fourth for Teo Martin ahead of Linus Lundqvist, who is the second of our podium finishers behind Liam Lawson. Cameron Dass is sixth ahead of Callum Williams, and Aldo Festante coming home in eighth place by just 1 second ahead of Billy Munger. It was actually quite a bit closer between the two of them over the final laps of that race. Festante, as you can see, a lap down, only 7 drivers finishing on the lead lap, and one of them, Callum Williams, the best part of a full minute behind our race winner Liam Lawson. And there is confirmation of the rest of the results. Munger a second behind Aldo Festante. Guillaume Samaya in 10th place. Rui Andrade did bring his car home after starting right at the very back on wet weather tyres. And Jack Doohan found himself in the barriers at Foch with 5 laps to go. But he will have had a couple of drivers to share the walk back to the pits with, not least Nikolai Kiergaard and Christian Hahn, who also binned in at that corner. Yuki Tsunoda clearly had plenty of speed, was clearly, you know, as potentially as quick, perhaps even as Liam Lawson. In fact, I mean, as you say, did lap quicker than him in his Team Motorpark car. But as they say, power is nothing without control.
Yeah, and Tsunoda will be shaking his head to that result because it's really hurt him in the title race, and I imagine he'd consider himself his teammate's closest rival right now. But losing points on a circuit like this isn't going to help.
Well, we're going to go down to the paddock now and hear from Alfredo, who has our dominant race winner, Liam Lawson.
Liam Lawson, victory at Pau. You must be happy.
Yeah, very happy. After 3 laps, I realised it's going to be a really, really long race, being 35 minutes long. So, yeah, it's a really physical track, but massive thanks to Motorpark, to Red Bull. Yeah, the car was really, really good. It was quite difficult at the start. It was quite damp in places. It took a while to dry out, so it was really, really slippery. But yeah, 27 laps of that is quite difficult.
How treacherous were the conditions?
Very at the start. Like it was really, really difficult. Even to just get off the line, had massive wheel spin, and I was quite low RPM, so. Yeah, quite difficult in that sense. But as soon as it dried up, it got better. But for us, we just lost the rears quite early, and then the car was quite difficult after that. But yeah, really, really happy.
No hesitation about tyre choice?
It was at the start. It was quite 50-50. I actually thought it was going to rain getting into the car and stuff like that. And on the formation lap, it was drizzling. So I thought, yeah, I didn't think we were going to be in a very good position. But it just stopped and it dried up. So that was the team's score. So big thanks to them.
Well done. Enjoy the podium.
Well, plenty of interesting things to pick over there from Liam Lawson. You could certainly see, Elliot, what he said about his rear tyres going off towards the end of the race. He was clearly finding the car a little bit of a handful in some of the high-speed changes of directions, the transition from Park Beaumont to Foch and so on, but also leaving it down to the team to sort out his tyre choice.
Yeah, and he's showed a lot of confidence there. And I believe we're about to see our drivers heading to the podium now.
Okay, and here's the highlights. Race 1 for the Euroformula Open at Pau began with Liam Lawson in pole position and big question marks over what drivers would do with their tyres. It was raining on the formation lap. A few of the drivers in the mid-pack did plump for full wet weather tyres, but within a few laps they began to find it a bit of a handful. Billy Munger had a bit of a look at Yuki Tsunoda, but Munger, one of the drivers who'd started on the wet weather tyres, soon found himself under pressure from the likes of Christian Hahn and Linus Lundqvist, who moved their way up into the points positions. As for Liam Lawson, no one really saw which way he went. He was at times half a second faster than anyone else. Christian Hahn hit the barrier at Foch and was the first of several retirements from that part of the track. Nikolai Kiergaard was under some pressure, not least from the lapped Guillaume Samaya, and Kiergaard dropped it as well down at the Foch chicane and retired from the race. Liam Lawson was completely untroubled by this. Despite the various crashes, we never saw the safety car once, and he just edged further and further ahead as others, like Jack Doohan, also found themselves in the barriers. So when the checkered flag came out, Lawson was an astonishing 16 seconds to the good for his second victory of the 2019 season. Our drivers are getting ready to come up onto the podium for the first of our two podium ceremonies post-race. Of course, we'll have one for the top drivers and one for the top rookies, and there will be a common theme to those two podiums, and it will be Liam Lawson.
Yeah, it is. He'll be extending his championship lead in both. So we have Sato coming on first, Julian Hanses going on to the second place, and Liam Lawson, who's looking a little confused there, but he should know that he's in first place. Little celebration from the New Zealander there. So that's an all Motorpark podium.
Indeed, and if they weren't too pleased about how things unfolded between some of their drivers in the last race at Paul Ricard, they've got plenty of cause to be satisfied this time.
And that is their race numbers on the screen, not how many points they've scored, we should point out.
And I think we're going to have the national anthem for our race winner coming up shortly. And here we go. So the anthem rings out for our winner Liam Lawson, and Marino Sato collecting his trophy for third position. And as you said, Motorpark locking out the top three podium positions. Of course, newcomers to the championship this year, and because of they raced in another championship last year, which did race at Pau, they will have come here with plenty of information, a very, very useful data bank for this particular circuit. It's obviously stood them in very good stead today. I mean, can we really see anybody beating them tomorrow?
It'll be a very different scenario because the Grand Prix has a huge amount of pressure, but Liam Lawson's already a Grand Prix winner, having won his home Grand Prix earlier this year in New Zealand.
Indeed, so he could well be in a good position. I mean, I suppose really the likeliest threat to Lawson tomorrow, based on what we've seen today, I would guess, would be his teammate from Japan, whose name has suddenly escaped me, Yuki Tsunoda. Sorry about that. I knew it wasn't Marino Sato, I was confusing myself there. Yuki Tsunoda, I mean, he was absolutely flying today, and it clearly has the potential speed, but just needs to keep things under control a little bit as we get ready for our rookie podium down in the paddock.
Yes, and we saw Tsunoda in qualifying as well, very quick at the beginning, but at the end you look at the result sheet at the end, he was further down behind his teammates. So I think maybe the weather will be the biggest factor on if Lawson can win again tomorrow.
And of course we should mention that while things have dried up and brightened up a little bit here, the forecast for tomorrow and the prestigious Pau Grand Prix is somewhat less favourable. We are expecting to see the rain arriving earlier and settling in for much of the day, and somewhat cooler conditions too. So it could be, I mean, it's been a challenging one today. It could be quite a bit tougher again tomorrow.
Yeah, and having rain makes getting temperature into the tyres very difficult, not helped by the track surface being essentially roads. But also, getting one lap pace into a tyre is very different to making it last over a race distance. Now, if it does rain throughout, we may see some drivers being very slow at the beginning, saving the rain tyres, because when it does dry, they do overheat very quickly.
Yeah, so make sure you don't miss the Pau Grand Prix tomorrow. Do join us again for that one. Race 2 will be underway at 3:20 local time, 2:20 back in the UK. Do join us a little bit ahead of then, of course, for the build-up. As we see up on the podium, our top three, Liam Lawson, Linus Lundqvist and Billy Munger. Those are the top three rookie finishers today. And that wraps things up on the podium. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll be back again tomorrow.
Yes! Yes! Yes!